And let me tell you why. This is the reason that's my personal opinion. To become a law enforcement officer, whether it's a sheriff, a trooper, or even the armed guard at Macy's, there is a certain amount of psychological testing and other things that you go through before the state of Maryland or the state of Utah or the state of California says, Sinbad, we think that you have the capacity to reasonably make good decisions, so we're going to, based on our background check of you, allow you to carry a gun. And we think that based on our psychological testing of you, that under pressure, you will make reasonable decisions with that firearm. Well, you're just giving guns to anybody and say, okay, go forth and handle this. You know, that's going to be a problem. So, for example, if I'm a guy with a short fuse and I'm the substitute teacher and I'm walking in with my 45 on my hip, and here comes Ambezi. You know, Ambezi is 12 feet tall. She's 16 years old. Right. She's 12, right. And she's like, why the hell did you fail me on my algebra exam? And I'm all up in the teacher's face. And that teacher's like, oh, my God, I feel threatened. So let me pull my gun out and put you between the eyes. Because we didn't know that psychologically Ambezi has a short fuse. You see, that's why law enforcement personnel go through such an extensive background to make sure, because once you put that gun in a person's hand, you know, now you have the ability to take a life at the blink of an eye. And that's why I think that that's not a good idea, to just let everyone run into the school carrying guns.
I agree.
Yeah, and the more guns you put, the more guns you enter into the situation, the amount of the opportunity for damage or death or injury grows exponentially.
I mean, here's what I foresee. Here's what I foresee. You already have situations. See, here's what I don't get. These people want to sit here and talk about how kids are walking into school as lone wolf, blah, 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 shooting up schools. These teachers they have the perfect storm for doing the same things. They're already not getting paid enough. They have to deal with these students every day. They have to deal with these attitudes every day. They have all this work to do. Back to point A, they're not getting paid enough. I can see a situation where a teacher can do the same thing. They can go crazy and walk into school and start shooting people. That's my problem, because it's like when it comes to children, it's almost like, you know, it's like you said, we post on social media, you see those signs and all that stuff, but it's like the teachers can be going through the same things. They already have videos on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter of teachers who accidentally get caught up in the heat of the moment. Like, for example, there's a video of two students fighting in this teacher's class, and the student accidentally hits the teacher, and the teacher had enough and accidentally got involved and ended up physically assaulting one of the students because he just happened to get caught up in the fight. That could have been so much worse. I just think that eliminating the guns is a better solution than trying to bring more. I understand trying to be prepared in the case of an active shooter or something like that. So, I mean, for me, it would have to be like, if I saw guns in school, it would have to be kind of like a fire safety type thing. You know how they have those things where you break the glass and then you get the axe out? It would have to be one of those situations for me. Like, you can have access to the gun if there's an active shooter, but I just don't think teachers should be openly armed with guns. I just don't see that as being a good idea. I just see that being very messy. It's like you said, law enforcement officers, that's their job. They get trained to deal with situations like that, and we still have issues with law enforcement, you know, and innocent civilians being killed. Teachers, that ain't it. Sorry, that ain't it.
Well, the other thing is that teachers have their plates full. they do some amazing things. They do some amazing things all over the country. And, because, even, I even go into the schools occasionally and help out. And those teachers are doing some incredible things. And we've shouted them out before. And when you're being hired as a teacher, with all the other credentials that are required of a teacher, but they're not being, and I'm going to make up a word. They're not being backgrounded to be law enforcement officers. Right. They're not putting them through a law enforcement background to determine your capacity to make good decisions under dangerous situations with a deadly weapon. Right. That's the difference. And so, and nor would I expect a teacher to go through that kind of background, because if they wanted to do that, they'd be police officers. Right. And so I think that, and again, you notice I didn't say we need to take people's guns away, because that's not what I'm saying. Right. What I'm saying is that we need to make sure that we think through this thing rationally. We need to make sure that if you're going to have people in the schools with firearms, that they are trained law enforcement personnel. And I know we've heard all kinds of, you've got ex-Army guys, all kinds of folks, and I get that. And maybe that's the solution. Okay, we got some retired police officers who are now teaching gym and algebra and all that other kind of stuff. But my concern is that when you have a firearm on your hip and something breaks out, you have to make a quick decision in a very short time about whether I'm going to use deadly force or not. And there are a lot of thousands of hours across the country go into training men and women every day to make sure that if they have to go to that firearm, that they have run through a series of things called the use of force continuum and all that stuff in like a nanosecond. And they've assessed everything. They've made a good decision. They have the psychological prowess to make reasonable judgment, and they make that decision. And even then, you see that mistakes are made. Sometimes people do things intentionally. Some people do things intentionally that are wrong, but oftentimes mistakes are made. And these are men and women that have thousands of hours of training. And so I just don't want to see us killing a fly with a shotgun when there are other things that you can do that will complement all of the good training that the police officers and others are doing to make the school safe, and then also complement the good things that the school personnel did. Everybody from the school board on down to that youngest substitute that was just hired. So they're doing a lot of good things too. They're looking at diversity. They're looking at de-escalation. They're looking at cultural awareness, all these things. But things have to complement each other. You just can't go heavy-handed in either direction, because that's not going to work.
I agree.
And even with all the training that the police have, you still have police officers that make mistakes. We see that all the time.
Exactly.
So imagine that, or imagine a student the wisecracking students who know which teachers have concealed carry guns, or going to try to take the gun from, or in a fit of something, or if there's a fight that breaks out in the classroom and the teacher gets involved to break up the fight, not pulling out a gun or anything, but maybe one of the students knows they have a gun and grabs the gun, or anything, or gets hold of a gun that's lost or anything,
All right.
Craziness.
Quick story time. Quick story time. When I was in middle school, my class was so bad. We used to do all kinds of things. My class was bad. So in the beginning of the school year, the roster comes out and the teacher goes down and checks if everybody is in class. So there's this one kid who I guess registered for our school, but he ended up not coming to the school, but they never took his name off the roster. His name was Alfred. I still remember this to this day. So because he did not show up, we made this running joke in our class that he got hit by a bus, which is, back then we thought it was hilarious. Probably not that funny now, but back then it was funny. So we had this substitute teacher, and we had never seen her before. Usually when they gave us subs, it was somebody that we knew. We never saw this sub before. But, she was a relatively nice lady, but I forget what it was where we just decided to mess with her. So she went down the roster and named the different students, and then she got to Alfred, and we all acted like we were crying. Like, we all acted so sad, like, oh my gosh, Alfred, he got hit by a bus and all this stuff, like, made her feel so bad. She started crying. Our principal had to come into the classroom because we made this poor lady break down. She's over here thinking, she did something wrong. And, I say all that to say, that is just one situation of when we stress the teacher out emotionally to the core. We really messed with her, and I still feel so bad to this day. But there are situations like that times 10 across America. I went to a private Catholic school where not a lot was going on, and I've seen teachers cry at least 4 times in my whole school career. So, I just think that when you add that, well, not even add, but like you have that minus the training, minus the overall tolerance. When you become a police officer, you already have this mindset that you're going to deal with a lot of crazy stuff. You already know. You don't know what you're going to see. You don't know specifically who you may deal with, but there are some crazy things that happen on that job, and you have to be prepared for anything. Teachers are prepared for situations with students, but they are not fully prepared for... I still believe that teachers are not emotionally prepared for everything that they have to entail sometimes. And when you add that with the lack of training, and then you place a firearm into the situation, to me, there's just too much room for mistakes. That leaves an even bigger gap. There's a difference between giving a law enforcement, official a weapon and a mistake happening, but now you're talking about basically a civilian who is watching kids already push your buttons. Like that is what we do. Well, not we. I'm not a kid. I'm like a young adult, but whatever. But as a kid, we push buttons. That's what we do. And it really just makes me uncomfortable, especially thinking about situations where teachers have kind of crossed the line or escalated. How much worse could that have gotten if they had a firearm? I just think that unless you guys are going to screen them, I agree with the chief. Unless you guys are going to screen them the exact same way as a law enforcement official, or you start getting ex-Marines, ex-cops, as teachers, I'm really not comfortable with the idea of a person who you don't really know their background like that. I mean, they do background checks for teachers, but I'm pretty sure it's not the same extensive process as, a police officer. So, I mean, unless you're going to come with the same rules and procedures, why can't they just up the school security? Why can't they just hire more, if you guys feel like you need more protection, hire more security guards or officers to be at your school? Why do you need to place that responsibility in the hands of a teacher? Why? They already have the task of watching and educating the kids. Now they gotta, all right, so I'm gonna teach algebra, but in case some things pop off, I got that thing on me. Like, that don't make any sense.
Yeah,
that's just a lot.
And truth be told, I'm willing to bet there's some statistics out there that probably show that teachers probably don't even want to carry guns.
Right.
That's not what they signed up for. I mean,
right.
You can imagine you got parents coming up now wanting to talk to teachers about the way they talk to their child. I can imagine can you imagine the parent that comes up there? I heard you pulled a gun on my son,
right?
Or my daughter, and then what happens then? And who is who's liable at that point if a gun goes